Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And as always, it's such a pleasure to be among all of you, especially for our Caribbean community for the 43rd regular meeting of our conference. I wish to record my delegation's deep appreciation for the wonderful Surinamese hospitality and the excellent arrangements in place for our meeting. President Santoki, you and your wife and your team have done an excellent job. Thank you so much. I also wish to welcome the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, the newly elected Prime Minister of Grenada, to his first meeting of the conference, and I'm sure that he will bring a fresh perspective and enrich our deliberations. But my best friend on election night, when we won, gave me this good counsel, and I want to share it with you. He said, enjoy the victory right now, because starting tomorrow, 75% of the time, somebody are happy and somebody are upset with the decision you make. And I made the mistake to say, so how about the next 25%? So the next 25%, everybody are vexed with you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when I assumed the chairmanship of CARICOM last January, we were hopeful that we were approaching the end of the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. All forecasts were that an economic recovery was on the horizon. ECLAC predicted 7.8% growth for the Caribbean. Travel was resuming, our tourism industries were reopening, our citizens were returning to work, and our children back to school. Alas, son, as my chairmanship expires, COVID-19 continues, climate changes, and conflict rages. Our collective response to the dual emergencies of the climate and the pandemic was shattered on the 24th February when Russia invaded Ukraine. The emergent food, energy, and financial crises are immediate and direct in their impact on our most vulnerable populations. And yes, I agree that we also in Belize have spent many times in cabinet talking about the price of bread and how we can keep it down, or the price of fuel. The Minister of State in Finance just told me last night that taxes on fuel are just on the pennies right now, and that is one of the most, our biggest revenue earner. And like us in Belize, pretty much all of us in the Caribbean are dealing with those pressing matters on us every single day. What has it become? Crisis governance is the new normal. Excellencies, the geopolitical landscape continues to be redefined. It took the war in Ukraine for the G7 to promote their partnership for global infrastructure and investment. A promise of some $600 billion for infrastructure and development in low and middle income countries. This is an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. New military establishments are being built in our region. These can become flashpoints. We must continue to strongly advocate for and ensure that the Caribbean remains a zone of peace. It is vital that we ensure that as small developing states, that we are not sidelined as powerful states and actors recalibrate their priorities and refashion their alliances. Despite the unprecedented challenges, and as we approach our 50th anniversary, I leave the chairmanship optimistic about the future of CARICOM integration. Optimistic because I have no doubt about our solidarity and unity of purpose. Our conference is of one mind about the nature and scale of the challenges our region faces. Whilst we do not have a unanimity on every single issue, we have been united on the most consequential issues, including climate change action, access to financing, and equitable access to vaccines. Our engagements are always frank, constructive, and respectful. We should never take this for granted. I'm also optimistic because our conference has been able to effectively exert strong and influential leadership at the global level. We should be proud CARICOM's leadership on climate and access to finance is well recognized and is starting to bear fruit. We have a standing invitation from the G20 presidency of Indonesia to participate in their work, which is now extended to Suriname as the incoming chair. The IMF's new Resilience and Sustainability Trust, not without its imperfection, is a direct response to our advocacy. The finalization of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index is within sight. And thank you so much, Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, for that work that you have been doing. And of course, we can't forget our own Mia Motley for doing her absolute best on that part. Over the last 6 months, we have had 2 high-level engagements with the United States. We have reset our relations and refocused our Caribbean-US partnership on the critical challenges of climate action, security, energy transition, and access to finance. Last month, at the Summit of the Americas, the US announced its partnership to address climate change, which aligns with many of our priorities and opens a new chapter in the US-CARICOM relations. The stage is set for a summit with Canada, a long-standing development partner of ours. With Canada, we must do more. Our community has also re-engaged with Central America in full recognition of the inevitability of interregional cooperation owing to our geographic proximity and shared challenges. We must build on this alliance with urgency and purpose. Later this year, we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Cuba and CARICOM countries. This historic milestone calls for a dedicated effort by us to bring an end to the illegal blockade imposed on Cuba, which has been in place for 70 years. Fuel prices have been too high for too long. We in the Caribbean call for the immediate lifting of the sanction imposed on Venezuela so that the revolutionary Petrocaribe program can be restated, providing our economies with much needed relief. I am optimistic because the first steps are being taken for concrete action on improving community governance. The task of reforming our community and secretariat must be urgently completed. I commend the Secretary General for the preliminary ideas, many of which are practical and doable. In agriculture, we are moving rapidly to dismantle barriers to interregional agricultural trade and to stimulate the investment needed to strengthen the regional food system. The targets set in our 25 by 25 plan are within reach. If we can deliver affordable, regionally produced food for our people, it will strengthen their faith in our integration efforts. When we met in Belize, we agreed to take a deliberate approach to industrial development in our region. A sound industrial policy will contribute to building economic resilience, improving competitiveness, attracting investment, and unleashing the potential of regional entrepreneurship and MSMEs. In short, bringing to life the CSME for all levels of society so that the benefits of integration can be experienced in the daily lives of our citizens. Definitive steps are also being taken to accelerate the regional digital transformation through the adoption of action plans for fast-tracking digital transformation for girls in ICT partnership and for the CARICOM Digital Skills Task Force. We have also finalized the reduction of roaming charges in the region. While the pandemic has underscored the necessity of digitization, the recovery is an opportunity to catalyze the digitization of the economy, government services, and social sectors so that the region is well positioned not just for the future, but for the present. The agricultural revolution, industrial development, and the digital agenda are interlinked and will contribute to deepening integration and building economic resilience at a time when the global economy is experiencing fragmentation. I am optimistic because we are on the right track. We are in fact converting our words into action, but we need to move with haste because the clouds on the horizon continue to darken. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, geopolitical tensions are driving a realignment of the international order. We are seeing attempts to forge a global democratic alliance to counter the irreversible movement towards a multipolar world. We are witnessing flagrant violations of international law with impunity. We are experiencing the weaponization of economic and financial interdependence. We are seeing a counterintuitive unwillingness to cooperate to protect the global commons. The war in Ukraine has unleashed an economic war in which our countries are collateral damage. The food crisis, already brewing as a result of climate change, has rapidly worsened. Rising oil and fertilizer prices, inflationary pressures, and an interlinked financial crisis combined to dim any hope of a robust economic recovery and threaten the social fabric of our societies. It is in this context that we have a duty, an obligation to keep global attention focused on the climate emergency, which is an existential issue for the Caribbean, but also, according to the IPCC, a code red for all humanity. Nothing positive has happened since Glasgow. There have been no new commitments to raise ambitions on reducing emissions. There have been no new commitments to deliver finance, no progress on adaptation, nor loss and damage. Increasing temperatures, changing rainfall patterns, and more frequent extreme climate events, and decimating agriculture harvest and disrupting food supply chains. Urgent investments and utilization of agricultural adaptation and mitigation measures, including insurance, improved storage, climate-resilient crops, adoption of new technologies can contribute to more resilient food systems. Similarly, accelerating transition to renewable and clean energy, the sources of which are varied and abundant in the region, are at the center of the solution to climate change. Energy accounts for over 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. The current energy crisis exposes how much more needs to be done. But this must not mean that we in the Caribbean should not be allowed to exploit our resources responsibly on behalf of our people. And of course, access to development financing is crucial if our states are to finance our recovery and invest in resilience. The finalization and use of the MVI and the mainstreaming of debt relief instruments are among many readily deployable tools to ensure access to development financing for vulnerable countries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our climate agenda is not an addition to or in competition with the geopolitical crisis and priorities. Our climate agenda is a direct response to the food, energy, and financial crisis. Let me close by thanking Secretary General and the Secretariat for their support and guidance over the last 6 months. I also wish to thank my colleagues heads for their cooperation, advice, and friendship during my tenure. I was the new kid in the block when I was also selected as chairman back then. It feels so long. And now it is turned out to leave and to turn it over to my good friend, President Santoki of Suriname, the chairmanship of the conference. I have every confidence, my friend, that you are going to do an excellent job. And I promise you, I wish you a successful term, and I promise you my full support. Thank you. God bless.